we're going to be doing the very short version.
Very, very short version. Do you? You're done.
But we're recording. I am going to cut off speaking.
We're recording? Perfect. Okay, then I'm going to get started. All right, so thank you for coming and thank you for your patience. Welcome to Hacking the Media for Fame and Profit. Before we get started, I would like to kind of have a feel for who's in the audience and what your level of experience with press is. How many people here have spoken to press before? Steve doesn't count. I was going to say, Corman, get your hand up. Okay, so a few. Of you, how many of you have spoken to press frequently? Okay.
Yeah, Bo's trying to not raise his hand, but we know he's included in that group too.
Have any of you worked with PR people before? I'm so sorry. Okay. So I'm Jenn Ellis. I'm the head of communications at Rapid7, and as part of that role, I work with a lot of security researchers. I work with people like H.D. Moore. I work with Trey Ford, Todd Busy, lots and lots of great people. We do lots of press stuff, and they are generally super cynical about talking to the press and about having to translate stories, and so I spend a lot of my time basically trying to convince them that it has its uses, and also like convince them that there are ways of doing it well. I've been working in the media for more than 10 years, which coincidentally is the same amount of time that my good friend here, Steve, has been covering security. So I'll let you introduce yourself.
So my name's Steve. I've been in security for a couple of years, and I am a reporter. Hi, Steve. So the big twist about my job is I came from working in the security to covering security, and it's two completely different worlds. So, yeah, that's pretty much my life tale. I started off working with IT and infrastructure management and moved all the way up to what I do now.
So to get us started, I'm going to ask Steve some questions about a day in the life of Steve. The idea here is for you to understand what a reporter's typical day is, and kind of know what you're up against, because effectively this is your target. And we always like to do a little bit of reconnaissance and figure out who our targets are before we launch our attack. So, Steve, how many emails would you say that you receive a day?
This week is different.
You need to talk into the microphone or it won't be recorded.
So this week is different. How many of you have heard about that bash thing? It's kind of new, but show of hands. Yeah, so from Wednesday until last night, I've gotten more than 800 emails related to that subject alone. Pitches, random blind pitches.
Okay, how many? Sorry.
So,
yeah, okay. Sorry. This is going to be delightful. So how many press releases do you receive in an average day?
about 100.
And how many calls do you receive in an average day?
Maybe about 10 to 15. Far too many.
Okay, how many articles or blogs are you aiming to write in a day?
1 to 2.
So, just to give you an idea of like the competition that you're up against when you're trying to talk to a reporter, the numbers involved, like if he's talking about 800 just on Bash, and in an average day I'm thinking you probably get about 200 in total emails, and you're not going to read all of them, right?
Nope.
So it's really important that your approach is right, and I'm sorry, it's day 3 of DerbyCon, I have no voice. Okay, so that's a little bit about what you're up against. So these are the types of people that are your targets. There's a selection of people here. They all write for different titles, but they're all people who cover security as their main focus. Does anybody know who any of these are?
Yes.
Krebs. Everybody knows Krebs? Good. So there's a variety of titles here. We have like, you know, the extremes of like the New York Times on the one end and like, I don't know, I guess Security Ledger on the other end. And so they have very different audiences. They have different levels of technical capability themselves. They have different levels of technical comfort that they're writing for their audience. They have different news cycles, different expectations on them of how many articles to produce a day. And it's important that you do your research and know who these people are before you make your approach. Effectively, what you're going to be doing is social engineering. And so it's really good to kind of have a sense of who people are. So know who their audience are, know what their core coverage area is, what they're interested in, know how often they write, know what topics they've covered recently, read the articles, see what level they cover things at. So once you've done your recon, you are going to try and get your initial foothold. So this is when you're going to make your approach. Now, the biggest challenge that I find for security researchers often is the language problem, the getting lost in translation. I get this on a really deep technical level, and I don't really want to make it super simple because I feel like I'm kind of cheapening it or making it trivial in some way, or I'm worried that the accuracy and the credibility won't be there. You need to be clear on the roles here. You are the expert, they are not. Their expertise is their readership and writing. And you have to go to the point that they're comfortable at and make it easy for them. That's your job, to translate this story to them, to make them care. So you have to make it relevant, which is why Steve has had 800 emails about Bash, because people want to be really relevant.
And for the record on that, out of those 800 emails this week, one email was directly related to a story I wrote. 799 of them were ignored. And most of them, believe it or not, were the wrong sorts of pitches, which you'll see going down there, is because they all started off with, our product would have prevented this. Really? Do you think? I don't think so.
This comes back to recon, because people who had done their reconnaissance would know that CSO is not going to cover their product anyway. So that's just clearly not understanding who their target is, and therefore making a pitch that doesn't fit with the target. Get your facts straight, get your story crisp, know what it is you want to say, be clear on it, don't fumble it, basically. Okay, so once you are ready to make your approach, you need to avoid the defenses that they may have in place. Steve has all sorts of filters that will set off alerts for him.
In the rest of this slide, if your pitch to a reporter contains any of those words, you're likely to be filtered out and ignored. No matter what your topic is, no matter what you're writing about, we're probably going to filter you out. And it's not because we don't like you, it's because none of that is going to be true. There's nothing you could pitch us that's going to be true if you're using that as a descriptor.
Now, a quick important note here, do not confuse actually having relevance with media with press releases. Those are not the same thing. And your company will want you to put things like, not that you're writing press releases, but when you see press releases that come out from your company, they will have things like next generation or game changing, that kind of thing in the release. Those releases are designed for the investor community. Make no mistake. They are not designed for Steve. Steve will look at them and he will be like, ooh, that fucking stinks. And he won't go anywhere near it. But he was never going to cover it anyway, because if you're using language like next generation or game changing, you're talking about products and he's not going to write about them. So don't confuse those two things. But one note on this is lots of people like hyperbole and lots of people like FUD. Does everyone know what FUD is? Generally speaking, there are two types of media: those who love sensationalism and those who want to avoid it like the plague. And you can encounter both. I will tell you, if you are dealing with the kind that like sensationalism, they're going to encourage the FUD, and you need to be very careful with that because it will undermine your own credibility, and they're going to be focused more on getting a juicy headline than getting the facts straight. So you need to be really, really careful with that piece. But if you're going to the other type of press, and again, this is where doing the recon comes in, if you're going to the other type of press, then you need to be aware that the more sensationalists you get, the more you're going to put them off. Somebody like Steve has a really, really sensitive bullshit sensor. And he is not going to be happy with something that sounds like, it's a disaster! And he's like, nah, but is it? Okay, so, now you're in. You're talking to the journalist, you got your pitch accepted, they want to talk to you, they think you're a badass, and they look like this guy. and they are going to try and get something really juicy out of you. Now, let's be clear, not all journalists are like this, but you should work on an assumption that they are. That's just the safest bet, because then you're prepared. Like, it's a risk model, right? You have to think about, like, what is my maximum possible exposure to risk, and how am I gonna mitigate it? So we're gonna talk about some of these techniques that some journalists will use. The top one on the list, this is the go-to favorite. Everybody loves this.
It's the most common trick you're going to see when you're being interviewed. And the reason for that, it's simple. It works. 9 times out of 10, I could do the very first thing on this list, and I will get whatever I want out of you. So remember, the whole goal of this talk right now is you guys are hacking the media so that you can get the story into the press in a way that you control. When I pull the silence trick, you're no longer in control. I will control you. Show of hands, who knows what I'm doing if I'm using silence? Okay, so some of you didn't raise your hand, so I'm going to demonstrate. What did you have for breakfast this morning?
I didn't have any breakfast.
You didn't have any breakfast? What did you do last night? Tell me about your night. Did you go out?
I went out with some people, had some dinner. It was nice. Went to the bar. Yeah, then I went back to the hotel, worked for a bit. Probably went to bed later than I should have. Now I don't have very much voice. Okay, so there was this guy.
People are uncomfortable with silence, and they will reach to fill it. All you have to do, ask your question, look them in the eye, smile, and then when they stop talking, nod your head.
Actually, on the phone, it's worse. So most of you will probably do briefings on the phone. And if there's silence on the phone, then something inside you dies, and you feel like you have to fill the void. So you have to just get really comfortable with silence. The thing is, if you can get comfortable with silence, you can totally take the control back on the call. And you can use silence as your weapon against some of the techniques that we're going to come and talk about next. So would you like to explain what machine gunning is?
What's your name?
Jen.
How long you worked in the industry?
Like a few years.
What'd you do before that?
Other tech stuff.
What kind of tech stuff? Come on.
I was, doing this, but for other companies.
What other companies?
I don't want to talk about it.
It's not a hard question. What other companies?
So machine gunning is where you just drill somebody continuously. Most people, when they machine gun, won't let the person fully answer a question. So they'll ask complex questions, and they'll keep asking them. The idea being, again, it makes you defensive. And what happens is the question you naturally focus on will probably be the most revealing question.
Yes.
That's how it works.
The idea is for me to ask you about 10 questions in roughly 5 minutes. And I'm going to just keep you off kilter, and the defenses will go up immediately. And then eventually I'm going to slip in the question I really want, and I'll stop machine gunning you, and you're going to answer that question fully. Because finally you can answer a question, you're going to jump right on that.
Yeah.
And that's the one I wanted all along. The rest of them were just fodder. I'm just throwing things at you to see what sticks and to kind of piss you off. And now that you are, you're going to answer the question I do want, and that's my headline.
Yep.
You can avoid that simply by finishing the questions as they're asked, no matter what I say to you. So if I say, what's your name and where did you work? Well, you know my name because you're interviewing me, and I worked for Lockheed before. Really, what you do there, that's none of your concern. Well, why isn't that my concern? Because it's not. You just keep answering in your own pace, not theirs.
If you're very comfortable with your talking points beforehand and you're crisp on them, then you can avoid this. But the other thing you can do is if somebody is machine gunning at you, you can use silence. You can just shut down. And eventually they'll realize that you're not going to start answering until they give you a question to focus on. So you can use it yourself, but it's a little ballsy to do it. You have to be comfortable doing it. Posing as your best friend. Steve's been doing this to me for as long as I've known him, and as yet it has got him nothing. I think.
It doesn't work for everybody. I mean, for years now I've been trying to get her to believe I'm her friend, and it just doesn't work.
The challenge with this one is, the reporters in our space, particularly the people who have covered it for a long time, are good people. And a lot of them will become friends with you. You'll see them at conferences, you'll get to know them. But they go to those events because they're looking for stories. You just need to be clear on the dynamic of the relationship. It doesn't mean that you can't go out and have a drink with Steve. And actually, if you ask him, he will tell you what his policy is on that.
My policy is if I'm drinking, then there is no story because I can't write intoxicated, and quite frankly, that's just wrong. I mean, it kind of ruins my credibility no matter what the story is if I'm completely sloshed when it happened.
But you cannot rely on that being the case. And that's
always assume
Steve's
I'll write
policy.
that story anyway. Always assume that.
Yeah.
That's your safe bet.
Right. Okay, so interrupting is like machine gunning. It's just basically that when you're trying to give an answer, they'll interrupt you, and they'll throw another question at you, or they'll try and ask the same question turned a different way. And again, it's to put you on the back foot. It's to try and see if a different answer bubbles up than the one you were originally giving.
Paraphrasing is the one you really want to work out for. A lot of you do some really great research, and you go to explain it, and you're trying to avoid FUD. But a sensationalist journalist will take what you've said and paraphrase it to where it's kind of alarmist. And they're going to say, is that right? And without thinking, you're going to say yes. And that just became the quote. It's not what you said verbatim. I paraphrased you, but you've given me permission to use your name in those words. You don't want that, because that'll make you look bad.
Another example of this that I can give you, recent one. So there's lots of reporters that are currently chasing the Home Depot story. And they're all looking for something sort of sexy and sensationalist that they can come out with. So I did a call recently with a national newspaper. And I cautioned the spokesperson beforehand that what they were likely to get was a question like, tell me about pen testing and how frequently people should pen test. And then to take that question and be like, okay, so if Home Depot only pen tested X amount of times, then what you're saying is Home Depot didn't pen test enough. Which is not what that person is saying at all. But you need to be really careful that you don't end up in a situation like that where you give a quote that you really didn't want to give. Dart throwing?
Just asking random questions, even if it's unrelated to the topic, and see what sticks. Dart throwing is usually something you do when you first meet a person. So you can find out what they're doing and where they are, and then if there's a topic at hand, you just ask questions around that, and you can gauge where a person's going. Now, the funny thing is, we're telling you these are all the bad things reporters can do to you in this list. Every one of these are something you can do to a reporter.
Yeah.
This is how you can manipulate yourself into a story, and it's entirely valid. But you need to remember that not every reporter is going to fall for all the same things, so
right.
You really have to know your target before you start attacking them to get your story in the press. But everything you see there is completely valid. It goes both ways.
Yeah, I would basically advise that the ones you use be silence, posing as your best friend, and paraphrasing. I would avoid the others if I were you. You'll make most people, most of those are designed to make people uncomfortable and feel defensive, and it's not a great way of creating a relationship. There's one other that's not on here. I don't know why I didn't put it on here. And that's basically when a reporter will come up with a contentious statement and fire it at you to see what your reaction is. So one that I get all the time is Metasploit
helps the criminals.
Yeah, Metasploit is evil! To which I turn into this guy. You just need to be very crisp on your messaging in advance and try and think about what those questions would be. Think about what the sort of contrary stance might be so that you can prepare your response to that stuff. Okay, so now you've had your briefing, you've navigated these issues. One of the things you might get is, we talked about where people will like ask random questions, they'll go off, they'll ask you contentious things. This is where you need to be able to handle those things and sidestep them. So we call it like blocking and tackling, or sidestepping, and sometimes bridging. So these are just some examples of the ways you can do that, because you don't want to sound defensive, and you don't want to be evasive, and you don't want to, you also don't want to rabbit hole yourself. So, and try and avoid making super negative statements. So it's that old thing about improv where you have to say yes and. So you want to start a statement with a positive. So things like, we take a slightly different approach. Or, you know, making it sound like you have a clear vision and thought on something. So, like, I think the question here really is so that you're taking control of the conversation rather than just defensively answering the statement that they've come up with. Okay, so hopefully by this time you've had a successful media briefing. And so this is all about escalating your privileges. So this is all about basically moving through the system to continue to increase your fame and profit. And relationships are everything. That's really the bottom line here. So this comes back to the making Steve feel like you're his best friend. So the real way you do this is you continue to deliver value, or you buy him drinks. It's one or the other. So keep pitching quality content. You need to be responsive and reliable when he comes to you. Bear in mind, a newswriter will have a very small window. For newswriters, you're looking at an hour's response time. That's pretty much it. And so you need to be really reliable, and you need to understand that press is disruptive, and if you want to do it, it's kind of a drop everything situation. Never expect to see copy or approve copy. They may offer it for a quote if it's a very technical, complex thing, but never expect it. You're not going to get it.
It is fair, though, for you to ask to see the quotes that they're about to use in context. So I won't send you the whole story, but I will send you the sentence that leads up to your quote and the sentence after your quote so you can see the context. It is acceptable to ask
I'm
that.
going to tell you that Steve is the exception to the rule.
And 9 times out of 10, you're going to get a reporter to tell you no.
Yeah.
They won't let you do it.
And they will be unhappy that you asked. And if you've said something in the briefing like, oh, so it's fine in a briefing if you get a question on something that you don't want to answer or that you're not super knowledgeable on, it's fine to say, I'll look into that and come back to you. If you do that, make sure you follow up. And so, like, just always do what you've promised to do. Don't leave people hanging. And again, remember, time sensitive. Okay. So hopefully all of this means that an article comes out and you're quoted in it and you look awesome and people start to know your name and they come to you because they want you to do things for them, or your research that you've done starts to get picked up everywhere. It's really important afterwards that you recognize that media training is an ongoing thing. You learn from every interaction, so you have to learn from what landed and what didn't. Look at which pieces of commentary were picked up. Look at which press used you. Try and learn from that. You also need to go into this whole thing with an expectation that at some point you will be misquoted. And how you respond to that situation will define your ability to build relationships. You cannot get into a situation where you go on Twitter and flame a reporter because you're embarrassed because your buddy is laughing at you. That's not okay. That reporter will never work with you again, and other reporters won't want to work with you because they have editors and they don't want to get in a situation where they're being publicly flamed. They are not the experts. Again, remember your role. You're the experts. It's your job to try and make it easy for them to get it right and to understand that sometimes they just might not. Steve's unusual in that he has really good understanding of security and has worked in security himself. But a lot of the people that we work with, even though they've covered security for a really long time and have built deep understanding, they are not technologists. They're writers. That's what they do for a living. And so you need to be really clear on your expectations on that, and you need to respond in a situation of this kind in a classy way. If there is something factually inaccurate that you did not say, you can reach out to the reporter. Do it directly through email, whatever, call them, just explain it. They'll normally be very happy to change it because it's their credibility too. They want to look accurate. But if it's something where you just feel like it didn't come off the way you wanted, you have to let it go. Which speaks to the maintain a positive tone and stay professional. And reporters want to have people read their content. So if you see an article and you like it, share it and give the hat tip to them. They love that. That's a really big thing. So that was a lot of information very, very quickly. So my top 5 tips for hacking the media. Do your research. Recon is very, very important. And if you do your research and you get yourself set up properly, it will carry you through really far. Make sure your positional message is crisp before you engage. My recommendation on this is think about your 1 to 3 core messages that you want to deliver. Reiterate them throughout your interview. Keep coming back to them. That's fine to do. Repetition is valuable. You can tell I've been repeating myself a lot to try and make points land with you. Be friendly and courteous. Be honest. I won't work with somebody if they have been intentionally disingenuous or misrepresentative. Once I know that that's the case, they won't ever do media for me again. Don't go off the record with someone you don't know well. And don't go on background with someone you don't know well. So just really quickly, the you can be on the record, off the record, or on background. On the record means anything you say is fair game. They can quote you and attribute it to you. Off the record means they can't quote anything you say. It's all considered private information. On background means they can use the information. They can't attribute it to you. The second and third options, the off the record and on background, are things you should only ever do if you know the reporter extremely well and have already gone through the process with them a number of times. Again, think about your risk model here. Thank you very much. We're running a media workshop at 1 in the Cavalry Room. It's a 2.5-hour, 3-hour session. We'll be actually doing one-to-one interviews with people, filming them, all that kind of stuff. It's real professional media training. It won't be like this.
And if you want to do the hands-on hacking for what we were talking about here, the one-on-ones will help you do that, because we can answer all the questions with actual time and not have people peeking in the door going... Just so
it'll be 3 hours on application whitelisting.
No, I'm not doing ad whitelisting again. That's horrible.
All right, thank you for coming.